The topic for this month's documentary was chosen through an idea that was suggested on the PVZ subreddit, which the community has asked to make into a documentary. If you wish to participate in the poll for next month's documentary, then be sure to stay tuned at the end of the video. Now, onto our scheduled program. It is no secret that Garden Warfare 2 has a large variety of characters, with 121 variants at the player base's disposal. People are bound to have their variants, who they think is the best, and who they think is the worst. From Electro P, to Toxic Brains, to even the marine biologist, it is safe to say that the vast majority of the community can agree on what variants are the absolute best in the game. One, however, has been a controversial mixed bag since day one. A character that has managed to end up on both sides of the community, causing mass debates that have lasted for many years, with popular YouTubers such as Wolfie Plays placing Chemist in the upper bracket of characters. Yet professional highly skilled players claim that the Chemist is either near the bottom or outright the worst character in the game. In tonight's documentary, we shall investigate this near-decade-old query and look at various facts, statistics, as well as general analysis of both sides of this controversial character, see which side holds more weight overall, and to ultimately seal the fate on the Chemist's general rank as a character. Before we explore as to why the community has such a divided opinion on the Chemist, let us first acquaint ourselves by looking at the balance history of the Chemist. On screen right now shows all of the patches that the Chemist has been nerfed in, along with a brief mention of what was done. Now that the timeline has been set, let us take the journey into the balance history of the Chemist. The first major change to the Chemist occurred on the 1st of July 2014 in the Tactical Taco Party DLC. This would mark his first and only nerf ever received in Garden Warfare 1. The patch included two nerfs, with one of them aiming at reducing the width of his weapon spread, making it slightly smaller and requiring more precision, along with reducing his ammo capacity from 10 down to 6. These nerfs, however, would only mildly change his performance, as he would still be able to very easily win one-on-one fights and dominate large groups of enemies easily. It would not be for nearly 2 entire years later before the Chemist was nerfed once again, this time in the Trouble in Zombopolis Part 1 DLC. This patch came with all but a single nerf to his damage output, reducing it from 40 down to 36. This would be the first patch that started to really hurt his performance overall, as having 4 less damage per shot would add up very quickly and force the Chemist to use additional shots against classes he would normally kill very quickly. The last pair of nerfs the Chemist would ever receive would be only a month later, in Trouble in Zombopolis Part 2. This patch nerfed his damage even further, from 36 to 35, though what was much more impactful was the rate of fire nerf, decreasing it from 100 down to 95. Whilst it seems rather insignificant at first glance and barely seems to change anything, this rate of fire nerf substantially harms his performance, as it means a slightly longer wait between each shot, which starts to add up very quickly when against bigger targets. The Chemist overall has gone down quite the nerf trip, from having his ammo count and spread reduced to having his damage decreased on 2 separate occasions, to even slightly reducing his rate of fire. It is all of these changes combined that has split the community into whether or not the Chemist is of any value as a scientist. Despite all of these nerfs, however, the Chemist still seems to be a very popular character, not only being frequently used in online multiplayer games, but also being shown frequently in various videos made by well-known PVZ YouTubers. The main question is why, out of all of the variants within the scientist class, why is the Chemist seemingly the one character used by a majority of the community? I am not exactly certain of this answer myself, hence why I took to the PVZ subreddit and uploaded a post asking the question on why the Chemist is quite popular. The following statements are some of the answers that the post had received.
I think people just really like the idea of being able to hit tons of people at once, but don't really understand that running into 3+ people simultaneously and killing them as slowly as Chemist kills isn't going to work on anyone who actually fights back.
The chemist dealing 40 damage with wide range is often attracting to players from how it seems he's very strong, also from the scientist class in total encourages more aggressive play from how someone thought giving the main healer for the zombies a shotgun as a weapon is a good idea.
If it's not those things, then it may just be a fun character for a chunk of the community, or they have hard time with crowds, even though he'll most likely die when dealing with crowds, or others can do just as good.
These responses each shared something in common, which I deemed to be extremely valuable in this study. All of them stated that the chemist is rather simple and easy to understand, requiring little ingenuity in order to pick up and play. The character is also frequently exalted by various well-known YouTubers, either being ranked in the upper bracket of tier list videos, or having multiple videos dedicated to them in terms of gameplay. Many of the PVZ YouTubers are not seen as top of the charts in terms of their skill, so their audience will see them completely dominating with the character, which may grant motivation and curiosity for them to try and do the same, as they believe that if they see their favorite content creator dominating with the character, then they may very well be able to fully replicate or even enhance their stunts. This amount of exploration and exposure is rather rare, as few characters achieve such a significant milestone, which whilst the chemist is able to achieve such a notable status within the community, it does seem to contradict one major thing that a majority of this exposure seems to not realize. In order for us to figure out the other side of the argument in why people think the chemist is the worst scientist, we must first analyze the statistics of the chemist, as well as to make some comparisons between himself as well as several other scientist variants in the game. As previously mentioned, the chemist currently deals 35 damage per shot at a rate of 95 rounds per minute. It is also important to mention the spread width of the chemist's weapon. For those of you who don't know, the spread width is how far the weapon's damage is applied horizontally, which, given the nature of almost every scientist's weapon, is key to knowing how much you can get away with in terms of your crosshair not being on target. Let us take the chemist for example, who out of all of the scientists in the game, has the largest spread width at 3.75 meters, and showcase his spread width in the following split screen demonstration. What this essentially means is that the crosshair can be quite the distance away from the target and it will still be able to hit them. To put it simply, imagine a cone-like shape projecting out of the chemist's weapon. However, some spray-based weapons have rather deceptive visuals, making you think that they do not have as much spread as you think. Let's take Fire Chomper as another example. From this demonstration, it looks as if his flames are just going straight forward and not showing any signs of going to the side. Yet if we dig into the files and look at the Fire Chomper's internal stats, we can see right here that his spread width is 6 meters in length, which is a lot larger than one might expect. This is shown clearly in the following split screen demonstration, showing how even though visually the All-Star is not engulfed in flames because of the size of the hitbox, he is still being damaged, which as a result looks like he is being attacked by what appears to be nothing. Now with the spread width explained, we shall run an experiment as to test the chemist's time to kill. First we must find the average health pool of a plant so that we have a baseline reference for us to follow. For the sake of time and simplicity, we shall calculate the average health of a plant by using the base health on all of the stock variants in each class, including the Torchwood, which brings us to 1260 total health across all 8 classes. Then we divide this number by the number of playable classes, and we reach our value of 157.5 health. Now, whilst no class has this amount of health exactly, we can very easily round it to the class that has the closest amount of health, which in this case would be the Kernel Corn, putting our baseline reference at 150 hit points. With the baseline reference now established, let us conduct the experiment. This experiment will take place in a split screen demonstration in Zenpeak, and set to crazy difficulty as to avoid as much complications as possible. The only thing I will say is that in this test, the footage for the marine biologist has the corn slightly damaged ahead of time, due to the private play damage reduction having major interference with the tests and making inconsistent results. So the starting health for the corn in this case will be at 145 hit points, though from additional testing, having 5 less health overall does not seem to affect the overall results. This test will consist of the following variants: the chemist, the marine biologist, the stock scientist, and the archaeologist. This test will consist of the 4 scientists competing for the fastest time to kill and will be aiming at the corn's chest at point blank range as to maximize the amount of damage that they can deal. All 4 scientists shown have their ammo and damage upgrades equipped as to optimize their performance and to give them the best case scenario. The footage has been synced so that all of them will fire their initial shot at the exact same time. As you can see from the following footage, the stock scientist finished first place, followed by the marine biologist, with the chemist barely taking third place from the archaeologist. Now, whilst this may seem like it proves the chemist to not be the worst scientist, it is important to mention that the archaeologist is one of the 2 scientists in the game whose weapon is capable of dealing headshot damage, which would reduce his time to kill against a corn by 0.5 seconds, which if taken into account would place him far above the chemist in terms of time to kill. Now, some of you may oppose, stating that the chemist is best used against multiple enemies, which yes, whilst he is capable of doing just that with great success, with a time to kill of 2 entire seconds, whilst not sounding a lot, can actually be beaten by a large majority of the playable plant characters in certain situations. Not to mention that characters like Citron and Torchwood boasting such a gargantuan amount of health that it simply takes far too long for the chemist to actually kill them, forcing the chemist to go against lower health targets. Whilst it is all good and well showing statistics as well as conducting a test to prove the rather poor killing potential of the chemist, if we wish to explore why certain people believe the chemist to be the worst scientist, then we shall have to explore even further. Hence why I have gotten into contact with several other creators in various interviews and through audio recordings in hopes of them shedding more light on this subject. Without any further questions, let us get to the interviews. Our first participant may be familiar to those of you within the modding community, as well as his active participation in hunting down hackers in the Garden Warfare 2 PC scene.
Hello, my name's Mr. JT, and I've been asked by Lieutenant to give my opinion on the Chemist. I think lots of people overrate this character, particularly newer players, as he isn't as good as you might think. First off, his max DPS is only 63, which is the lowest in the Scientist class. Now, you could argue that TTK is more important for Chemist, but his TTK is also the worst of his class, at about 2 seconds. Add on to that the fact he's limited to close range combat only. So I'd say he's one of the worst scientists. I suppose his wider spread range does allow him to deal with groups better than other variants, but it doesn't really matter that much given the group can bundle him before he can kill them. There isn't much point in using Chemist over Zoologist, as the latter may have less spread and range, but kills much faster.
Our next participant is a PC player, well known for setting high kill records across the PVZ shooters, as well as their noticeably high amount of skill.
Honestly, I think Chemist is a character that is very overhyped. He doesn't have any range, he only is good in close range situations. Even his close range, with his only 100 health and his low ammo, he can easily be taken care of, like with any insta kills or just high DPS, or even just mobility, because usually he uses his warps to get into fights, and then he's just kind of stuck. He can't really get out of fights after getting like a kill or two, and even as just a scientist, he can't support anyone. And he's just stuck if you can keep him at range, so I feel like he's a pretty weak character, and people only really think he's good because he literally takes no aim up close, so you can just shoot in their general direction if you're in their face, unlike other scientists where you actually have to have your crosshair on them. So I think that's why people think he's better than he actually is. But this low DPS and his low ammo count, he's really not that good.
The next participant is fairly well known within the community, growing substantially within the last few months, and is known for their comparisons to various variants within each and every class in the game.
Hey guys, what's up? My name's Chump Sizzle, and I am once again another small Garden Warfare content creator who gets paid to express their shitty opinions on YouTube. Today I'm going to be giving you guys my personal thoughts on the Chemist character. So first I'm going to read you guys his numbers and compare them to the rest of the Scientist class. Then I'm going to give you guys my overall thoughts on this character, which is seen to be one of the most controversial characters within the Garden Warfare franchise. So Chemist, as we all know, is only meant to be played close up. Since he only has a spray type primary weapon, he's really going to have to rely on his power close up since he has no firepower outside of 7 meters. Chemist's primary weapon has the lowest damage per second of his entire class at only 63.33, while compared to the average Scientist DPS of 82.81. He also has easily the worst time to kill rate in his entire class once again, at only 1.87 seconds, which is really just another way to measure his overall damage production. Chemist on top of that doesn't get very good value out of his clip size, which is only 7 shots with the upgrade, meaning at most he could deal 280 damage per clip, which ranks him as the 3rd worst Scientist in his entire class, at least in that area. This detail could be somewhat redeemed if he had a decent reload time, but he really doesn't, at 2 seconds to reload, which is tied for the worst with marine biologist and archaeologist. Chemist does have a redeeming factor that some can argue can make up for all these flaws that I just mentioned, and that is going to be the size of his spray, which is easily the best out of his entire class. All you have to do is shoot within 18 meters or so, and you get the damage off, and this definitely makes him a better Scientist at taking out groups. It makes him a very easy character to play and understand. Another feature I want to bring up that is crucial to the Chemist is in regards to his range and being a support character. I've said this before in my own videos many times, and it's basically that support characters are meant to aid their team at all ranges and be characters that can support their team in numerous situations and not really have to worry about adapting too much. This versatility is clearly something that Chemist does not have because of his awful range. You're really splitting hairs with this character since he's only able to fire close up, which is not always where the majority of your team will be located, who you should be healing by the way. You really have to decide between being able to be a force and acting selfish in a way where you're not supporting your team and just going for kills and fending on your own, or you could just heal others but not get much action from your primary weapon or not getting many kills out of it. But many support characters really don't have to deal with this kind of issue of choosing one playstyle over the other, while ideal support characters are able to support their teams regardless of the situation, like sunflowers, astronauts, and roses. Overall, I see Chemist as a very bad support character. His area of effect for his spray is definitely nice, but in my opinion, it's really not enough to make up for his clip size, and most importantly, his lack of range, and is arguably the worst Scientist. But I honestly hope you guys can see what I'm getting at with this character. I don't think he's very good, but at least I want you guys to understand my argument. But once again, we're all entitled to our own opinions, and that is okay. But before I go, I want to thank Lieutenant Darkring for collabing with me, and I want to say that he is an awesome content creator. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys. Peace.
Our final participant for tonight has quite a lot to say, both in terms of stating why Chemist may be the worst, but in also defending him and providing evidence that may suggest otherwise.
The thing is, like, some people have been, like, debating if the Chemist is, like, literally the worst character. Well, and while I might be, like, extremely biased here because, well, you're trying to ask, like, someone the nickname of Chemist Zombie after all, I kind of give you some, like, my 2 cents if you want to. I guess, like, the only reason why people consider Chemist as a bad character is probably because, like, he's, like, one of those characters that can only deal, like, a specific range, like, he's good at, like, close range, but completely sucks at long range. Meanwhile, if you look at the other characters that are the meta, like the astronaut or like the computer scientist or like paleontologist, they're good at both kind of like in a short and long range. With the short range, you just, for example, with the astronaut, and it just does insane damage up close, and then at long range, the damage fall off isn't that significant to the point where it's actually like damage difference is pretty much negligible. You can safely use them and at long range. Same goes with paleontologists. Okay, even though the base damage is lowered, the fire damage stays the same. Throughout like the entire range, and it never drops down at any point. So I guess that's probably the reason why people just bashes on Chemist for being a terrible character. It's only good at close range. You can't do like long range at all because you can't just hit them. But if you're trying to play Chemist as a long range character, then you're already doing it wrong. That's pretty obvious. Okay, so let's not talk about that much. Okay, of course, Chemist cannot engage things like cacti drone or like the cacti themselves, but at least can actually engage characters up close. Characters like Chomper, they're like on par with the range. Both of them have terribly close kind of like range. So they're pretty much a good matchup. It is very good against that. So like certainly, yeah, I guess that's the main reason. It's pretty much just outshine that character that can do both ranges at the same time. And if the fact that he can only deal close range damage is the only reason why it's so bad, then well, why don't people consider all Chompers and Super Brains as terrible? Because they're pretty much similar. In fact, the Unicorn and Twilight Chomper, they do have warp. They can only attack up close. They're like Chemists. Then why don't people bash on them? Okay, is it because they're like the only quote unquote good kind of like Chompers? That's the thing. And same goes for like Super Brains. Can use the hero kick, which is kind of like similar to like like warping, I guess, because you have like massive mobility right there. And again, no one calls like all Super Brains are bad. They just like pick on some of them. So I guess yeah, that's the thing. It just pretty much get outshined by other scientists that can do longer range. And also, yeah, he does have worse DPS than the zoologist. If you look at the DPS calculator, I think there's like a website that allows you to see that, and like a Google like sheet. Yeah, it does have like worse DPS, but the range is actually better, and this actually makes it more reliable. Okay, because do keep in mind that when trying to play like character stuff, it's not just about like how much DPS or TTK you can do. Okay, like how fast the TTK is or how much DPS is. Okay, it's not just that. Okay, you also have to factor in the reliability. Okay, and the thing is, the problem with the zoologist is that I just found out that using zoologist is so much less reliable because he's got like this much shorter range. Not to mention that he's got less ammo compared to Chemist. So. And this could be a problem, when engaging some enemies, like if you forgot to reload or like there's multiple enemies and stuff, like you might not be able to get them in time and with zoo, and you just die. And well, with the Chemist, he's got longer range, he's got like a bit more ammo, I guess, and the damage is also like kind of slightly better. If I remember correctly, you can actually kill like Citron, with like a full mag. Well, like with zoologist, you can't really do that because it doesn't have enough ammo. I think it's like 33 damage with the damage upgrade, while Chemist does 40. And yeah, this could actually matter too. And like yeah, and the range, like the reason why that slight increase in range makes him like more reliable, it's actually noticeable. Remember, it's because yeah, if you like want to warp or just like approach your enemies, you don't have to get so insanely close to them that you're pretty much risking yourself to like getting shot immediately. So like you can like stick a bit further, and this means that the enemies like are gonna be having a bit of a harder time to try and attack you because it does matter. Like that slight difference means that any kind of spread and inaccuracies the character has will actually come into play there to like affecting the survivability of it. So with the Chemist can just engage from further and kill them more reliably because usually with characters like Cactus and stuff, they can't really hit too close to you because remember the Cactus has like massive kind of bloom if you don't zoom in, and like this actually matters here with zoologists just die. Also, yeah, sneaking behind enemies is just really fun, honestly. Like that's how you're supposed to play him, really, honestly. Like I guess all the hate, honestly, the reason I think all the hate just pretty much comes from the tryhards who just like wants to get as much kills as possible. And like that's actually like a major problem. Like one of the problems with like many of these games, like shooter games and stuff, is you just like consider the meta. Like, and then if like something is like worse than the meta, then you just they're bad. Okay, because the tryhard just care about massive DPS. But in my opinion, Chemist is like supposed to be like a more casual type of character. You're not supposed to like try hard with him, just supposed to just play the game, in a more relaxed way, just try to sneak behind enemies, for fun and just engage them. I don't just, do your regular kind of deal killing people from like afar kind of thing. Because that's not how you play him. Like that's the thing. It just makes for a more casual play style, and I guess this contributes to the hate, because well, casual means like noob, you're a noob, why don't you use the metas? And like this is a trend observed in all kind of like communities, where they just care about the meta and just ignoring anything that's off meta. So yeah, I guess those are probably the reasons why it gets a lot of flack. Honestly, it's pretty decent.
These 4 participants have shared a lot of their perspectives on the Chemist and have shown in many ways in how he performs much worse in comparison to every other scientist, from the lack of range to the poor time to kill to being clearly outshined by the other variants in his class. The conclusion for the Chemist only seems inevitable from here. We discussed quite a long and well-known debate tonight over the conflicting options that the PVZ community has on the Chemist, and now, with all of the evidence in hand, I shall now lay down my final verdict in how I feel about the Chemist. From his lack of range, inability to go after high health classes, poor time to kill, and overall, just generally poor in overall performance, I can safely say that the Chemist is definitely the worst scientist out of the entire class, since he can very easily be shut down long before he can reach you, and is very easily countered by any form of mobility or high burst damage. I wish to also give massive thanks to Mr. JT, Chump Sizzle, Sarah D60, and the Chemist Zombie for collaborating in this documentary and providing their experiences and thoughts on the Chemist. A link to each of their channels will be in the description. If you wish to participate in the poll for next month's documentary, then be sure to head into the comments section and check out the pinned comment, for a new poll has been started for the next documentary that you can cast your vote on, so be sure to participate. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this in the future. And good night.